week one of absolute Republican rule. Trump in the White House, Republicans in the Senate, and House of Representatives has been disastrous for a number of groups, the largest of which arguably is women. And here to talk now about two actions taken this week that have been particularly harmful on that score is Kierra Johnson. Kierra is Executive Director of URGE, which stands for Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. She has also worked a lot on generational issues regarding this and other issues as well. And she joins us now. Kierra, thanks for coming on the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wish it was under better circumstances, let's put it that way, but here we are. So Trump is in office, and one of the things he did right away before, as soon as he hit the ground, was reimpose what is called the global gag rule on U.S. aid, and that basically denies U.S. funding to any group that advises women anywhere in the world about reproductive control of any kind. Is that right? Do I have that essentially right?
That's correct. It prevents organizations from receiving any aid from the U.S., even if they talk about abortion, if they refer clients or people to clinics that provide abortions, they would be cut off from funding.
So this is, it's a lot more draconian, I think, than a lot of people, especially men, but people in this country might realize. I mean, I've traveled with aid groups and so on to India, Africa, and elsewhere. And, you have a network. You don't have that many health providers, first of all, and you have a network of health providers that aids women in these countries, and they're basically saying not a dollar of U.S. aid if somebody refers to somebody who might perform an abortion, right? So this has a devastating impact around the world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The reality is that healthcare is so essential, for women wherever we are, right? Whether we're here in the U.S. or we're in another country, and in places where there are conflict, for example, places who need refugee aid. Often violence against women is happening within these camps, right? It's happening in situations of war where abortion care, in addition to other care, is needed. And to deny refugee organizations federal funding from the U.S. because they're referring women who have been attacked or who need abortion services, it's ludicrous. There are women who are suffering with HIV and AIDS, and are, organizations that are tending to those families. And because they refer women or young people to abortion services, to deny them money from the United States, aid to save people's lives because they referred someone to get an abortion. It spits in the face of this rhetoric of we care about women and we care about children.
Yeah, it really does. And you make a great point, Kierra Johnson, about the horrors that women go through in these refugee situations and the role that abortion can play in that. It strikes me as incredibly hypocritical of these guys, and they are guys by and large, who on the one hand express outrage at Boko Haram, kidnapping young girls and women and bring back our girls hashtag and all that, and being outraged at ISIS forcing Yazidi women into forced marriages and so on, and yet not when these women are able to escape and make themselves get themselves to a refugee situation, to deny them the ability for an abortion. The message of all that to me is not that you care about women, but that you hate women and Muslims, and this is all a cover for your own hypocrisy. Am I being unfair?
I don't think so. I think, in addition to that, in addition to denying health care to women and families who are already suffering, the global gag rule goes one step further, and it denies NGOs, organizations, women from even being able to talk about abortion, to advocate for abortion with their governments. And again, when we're thinking about as a country that is supposed to hail democracy, that is supposed to champion democracy both domestically and internationally, the global gag rule does the complete opposite. It takes away the right for people to advocate on their own behalves to their governments to further women's care, specifically around abortion.
It strikes me as you were talking, Kierra Johnson, of urge that there's a connection between this gag rule and the gag rule Republicans are always trying to force on doctors here in the United States, preventing doctors from saying everything they might want to say. They talk about how sacred the doctor-patient relationship is, and then they want to put the government in between a doctor and her or his patient, right?
I have to tell you, this makes me really nervous because also in this same week, we've also seen the administration put a gag rule on agencies, federal agencies in our country. Censorship seems to be a value of this current administration, and they are they clearly are on a campaign to censor both folks at the international level, but to censor our own people right here at home.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I want to go back to, a point you've touched on a couple times, Kierra, and that's the fact that that reproductive rights and reproductive care, including abortions and contraception, and all those other services they're trying to block in various ways, there's really no way in the real world to provide adequate health care for women that does not include some of that. So it seems to me it goes back, everybody talks about Trump, and we should. I do too. And he is outrageous. But the Republican Party for many years has been declaring, in my opinion, and obviously I want to get your thoughts, a war on women that includes especially a war on women's health, whether it's defunding Planned Parenthood or anything else, because you can't separate the two issues at the end of the day. If you're telling women, doctors, what they can say to women, if you're limiting the kind of care people can get, if you're defunding organizations because a certain percentage of their activity involves reproductive care in various forms, then you are in fact fighting to suppress full health care for women. I don't see any other way around it. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I was at the march last weekend and I saw a picture of a veteran who had a sign, and it said, "I didn't fight in Afghanistan for other people's rights to have the rights of my wife and my daughters taken away." And that really struck me. It's very powerful. The administration is not only trying to limit access to abortion services. We have to be paying attention. At the same time, he's trying to gut our healthcare, the ACA, which also means denying parental leave. It means denying maternal health, prenatal care, all of these things. This isn't just about abortion. This is about denying women what they need to live autonomous, healthy lives where they thrive and can exercise free will and power. That's what this is about. There is absolutely an attack on women. And unfortunately, what this means is when you attack us, you're attacking our families, you're attacking our communities. But the good news is that we're all ready to fight back.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I'll be supporting you all the way on that. Now, just to make clear that these Republicans are essentially universally horrible on women's issues, the House just passed a sweeping ban on abortion funding. How does that work?
Yes, so I think you're referring to HR 7, and
Yep.
what that would do is it makes the Hyde Amendment permanent, and it interferes with private and public insurance and their ability to provide coverage for abortion services.
Yeah, so basically what they're doing is the Hyde Amendment was passed in the 1970s. Because of the technicalities, the legislative technicalities, it has to be repassed every year. But essentially, federal funding for abortions has been illegal since 1976, I think it was. And now what they want to do is they want to make that permanent. So what does that do, really? How does that affect the daily lives of women in this country?
The reality of HR 7 means we deny the women who need, HR 7 denies the most vulnerable women access to abortion services. So when we're looking, not only is abortion a healthcare issue, it's an economic justice issue. The reality is that a woman who seeks an abortion and is denied one is more likely to fall into poverty than a woman who is seeking one and is able to obtain an abortion. The reality is that when women have families, right? Women have careers, and when they are forced to bring another family or another person, another baby into that family, it's going to have an economic impact. And for poor families or families living paycheck to paycheck, that's often a negative impact. So in essence, this bill will be forcing women into poverty.
And just to be clear on the gauntlet that they are forcing women through in this country, so they are forced to have that child. If they're lower income, they're thrown in a workforce where, if they're quote unquote lucky, they get a job where the minimum wage leaves them in poverty. They don't have affordable child care. They don't have predictable work schedules so they can arrange babysitting. On and on and on and on. This is really the most horrific abuse of poor women. But Kierra, let's be real. What these people are really saying is, if you don't have as much money as they do, you shouldn't have sex. That's what this is all about to me. This to me is about punishing poor people for actually living out their full humanity by having relationships or sex or whatever they choose to do. It's about extending that kind of repression on them and making it even worse than it is today. Am I going too far?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's about controlling people, right? And in this particular case, we're talking about poor people, often poor people of color. And the reality is that what the rhetoric is saying to us is, like you said, if you don't have enough money, you don't get to have sex. You don't get to choose how many children you have. You don't get the right to privacy. You don't get rights the way everyone else does in this country, that somehow rights in this country are dependent upon how much your paycheck is. And we fundamentally believe that all people have the right to make healthcare decisions, even around abortion, with dignity and free from political interference. And most Americans agree with that.
Well, yes, they do, and I certainly do, and we're going to be out there fighting, all of us. So, and speaking of fighting, Kierra, where can people go to find out more about your organization?
You can visit our website at urge.org, that's urge.org, and follow us on Twitter at urge_org.
All right. Well, listen, thanks a lot for all the great work you do. And Kierra Johnson, Executive Director of URGE, that's Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Oh, we will.